You found your way to Whispers of Crimes, a quiet corner where the shadows of the past are gently told. Here, we speak of real crimes and mysteries, not to shock or scare, but to wonder, to reflect, and maybe to help you fall asleep. So close your eyes, let your thoughts slow down, and come with me into tonight's case. He was a quiet man, a school teacher, respectable, invisible. Women trusted him. Their families welcomed him. He promised love. He delivered death. Over 6 years, they disappeared, one by one. All found in public restrooms, their lives ended by a pill he gave them. No wounds, no screams. Just a faint trace of cyanide and a trail gone cold. In India, they called him Cyanide Mohan, a man who turned heartbreak into a weapon and walked away unnoticed. What drives a man to kill? Not once, but 20 times, without remorse, without leaving a trace. This is the story of a killer who hid behind a promise of marriage and delivered only death. Chapter 1. A mask of normalcy. Mohan Kumar's life began like that of countless others in India. Born in 1963 in the coastal city of Mangalore, Karnataka, he was the son of a humble family, raised with traditional values and educated in local schools. Eventually, he became a primary school teacher, a job that commands respect in Indian society. To his colleagues, neighbors, and the children he taught, he was soft-spoken, punctual, and seemingly kind. He was a man who lived modestly and didn't attract attention. Nothing about his outward appearance hinted at the monstrous crimes he would commit. But under the surface, Mohan Kumar was quietly battling personal demons. His personal life was marked by failure. He never married, and over the years, he developed a deep resentment toward women, particularly those who turned down his proposals or left him. Friends described him as socially awkward and emotionally detached, with an obsessive need for control and validation. He grew embittered, perhaps by romantic rejection or a deep-seated inferiority complex. Eventually, his frustrations took a dark turn. Around the early 2000s, Mohan Kumar left his job as a teacher and began to drift through towns and cities across Karnataka. He assumed various fake identities, sometimes posing as a government employee, sometimes as a bachelor from a wealthy family. In each case, he had one motive: to deceive, exploit, and ultimately kill. He was about to embark on a killing spree that would last 6 years, claiming the lives of at least 20 women and shaking India's sense of safety to its core. Chapter 2. A sinister modus operandi. The killings began quietly. In 2003, a young woman from a rural village disappeared after getting engaged to a man she had just met. Weeks later, her body was found in a lodge bathroom, foaming at the mouth, with a packet of cyanide near her corpse. The death was ruled a suicide. No one raised an eyebrow. It seemed tragic, but not suspicious, at least not at the time. This pattern would repeat over and over in the years that followed. Mohan Kumar would target women between 22 and 35 years old, often from lower-income families, women who had few marriage prospects and whose families were desperate to see them settled. He posed as a suitable bachelor, charmed the women and their families, and promised marriage. Then, under the pretense of eloping or registering a secret wedding, he would lure the woman away, usually to a lodge, guest house, or temple. He would spend the night with the woman, convincing her that she needed to take a contraceptive pill to avoid pregnancy until the marriage was officially blessed. The pill was a cyanide capsule. Mohan would then instruct her to take it in a bathroom, saying it needed to be taken in privacy. Within moments, the victim would collapse and die, her body often found hours later by hotel staff or passersby. By that time, Mohan had already vanished, taking with him the woman's jewelry, cash, and any evidence that could tie him to the scene. His method was cold, calculated, and eerily consistent, and for a long time it worked. Because he operated in different towns under different names, and because the victims came from poor or rural families who often hesitated to report such cases, Mohan was able to continue killing without suspicion. In fact, several of the deaths were simply marked as suicides, unquestioned by a society where female despair often goes unexamined. Chapter 3. Preying on the Vulnerable. What set Mohan Kumar apart was not just the number of victims, but how effectively he manipulated the weaknesses of the people around him. He didn't stalk women in the traditional sense, he studied them. He understood the desperation many unmarried women felt in a society where marriage is often viewed as a woman's only path to stability and respect. He read their vulnerabilities like a textbook and weaponized their trust. Many of the women he targeted had been previously jilted or had struggled to find a match. In India, especially in small towns, a woman who elopes or is rejected by a fiancé often carries a stigma that follows her for life. Mohan used this fear to his advantage, promising secrecy, a fresh start, and a respectful future. He met their families, convinced them of his intentions, and even went through pre-wedding rituals before orchestrating the murder. He kept a meticulous routine. He maintained multiple SIM cards and phones under fake names. He used aliases like Anand, Prem, and Sunil. He changed locations constantly, never staying too long in one town. And he sourced cyanide from jewelry shops, where it was sold for gold purification, a loophole he exploited with ease. Even after killing his victims, he didn't just vanish. He often tipped their gold jewelry, pawned it, and used the money to sustain his nomadic life. He left no trace, no fingerprints, no connection to the crime scene. In some cases, he even comforted the family in the days leading up to the murder, giving no hint of what he was planning. By the time authorities started connecting the dots, Mohan Kumar had already killed over a dozen women. It wasn't until one woman's family refused to stay silent that the pattern began to unravel. Chapter 4. A break in the case. In July 2009, a woman named Anifa went missing. Her case would prove to be the beginning of the end for Mohan Kumar. Anifa had been in contact with a man who promised to marry her. She told her family she was going to register the marriage with him at a temple in Mysuru. She never returned. Unlike other families who had stayed silent out of shame or fear, Anifa's relatives were determined to find her. They filed a missing person report immediately. Days later, her body was discovered in a public toilet near the bus stand, with white froth at her mouth and a cyanide packet in her hand. She had no visible injuries, and the police initially suspected suicide until they looked deeper. Shortly after, another similar death occurred, this time a woman named Sunanda. She, too, had died under similar circumstances, after eloping with a mysterious man, in a similar public setting with the same telltale signs. Investigators began to cross-reference these cases with older, unsolved incidents and found an unsettling trend. CCTV footage from bus terminals, witness descriptions, and mobile phone records all began pointing to one man, a bald, medium-built individual who used multiple names and SIM cards, always posing as a government employee. Police traced calls made from the victims' phones and found they led to the same mobile tower clusters in and around Mangalore and Udupi. Eventually, they were able to identify Mohan Kumar. He was arrested in October 2009. At the time of his capture, he was carrying women's clothes, fake documents, and a small container filled with cyanide. Chapter 5. The Confession of a Killer. Once in custody, Mohan Kumar's demeanor shocked investigators. He showed no panic, no remorse. Instead, he calmly recounted his crimes with chilling detail. He remembered each woman's name, where he met her, what he told her family, and the exact date he killed her. He even described how he gauged the correct cyanide dosage to ensure a quick death. His motive, he claimed, was part financial, part psychological. He saw these women as gullible and disposable. He blamed them, indirectly, for the disappointments in his own life. For him, the murders were a way to assert control and settle imagined scores. He told police he had been able to buy cyanide from jewelers without raising suspicion. He had practiced how to deliver it without detection, and he knew that the setting of a public toilet gave him an easy alibi. He could disappear into the crowd while the victim collapsed in private. The sheer planning behind his actions unnerved even veteran officers. He was not impulsive, he was methodical. He took time to build trust with his victims, sometimes spending days with them before the murder. He even planned his escape routes in advance, booking bus tickets under aliases or traveling without documentation. He had lived multiple lives in multiple towns while the bodies piled up in his wake. Chapter 6, Justice in Fragments, the arrest of Mohan Kumar made national headlines. The media dubbed him Cyanide Mohan, and the name became synonymous with calculated evil. His case would stretch over several years as police worked to link him to every murder. Each case required its own investigation, testimony, and trial. He was eventually charged with 20 murders. In 2013, he was found guilty of Anitha's murder and sentenced to death. Over the next few years, more convictions followed. In total, he received multiple life sentences and additional death penalties in separate cases. The court labeled him a danger to society, someone who had no regard for life, no conscience, and no hope for rehabilitation. However, in 2017, the Karnataka High Court commuted one of his death sentences to life imprisonment, citing legal inconsistencies and a lack of rarest of rare qualifiers. Yet, even with the commutation, Mohan Kumar would never walk free again. He remains incarcerated in a Karnataka prison where he spends his days alone, his crimes too horrifying for even other inmates to ignore. Chapter 7. The Cost of Silence. Mohan Kumar's story is not just about a serial killer. It's about the systemic failure that allowed him to kill again and again. It's about the silence of victims, the slow response of law enforcement, and the dangerous weight of social stigma. Most of his victims came from the margins, young women with few options, pressured into marriage, and too ashamed or afraid to report abuse or fraud. The police often failed to take their disappearances seriously, and society too often accepted their deaths as the price of female despair. Had the system worked earlier, had the first death been treated with suspicion, dozens of lives might have been saved. But it wasn't until the pattern became impossible to ignore that action was taken. Mohan Kumar exploited this blindness, knowing that poor women's deaths would rarely spark investigation. His crimes are now a case study in how killers hide in plain sight, shielded by cultural silence and bureaucratic indifference. And though he has been brought to justice, the legacy of Cyanide Mohan remains a dark chapter in India. As criminal history, a reminder that monsters do not always look like monsters, and that evil often wears the most ordinary face. That's all for tonight's story. Another thread in the web of true crime, quietly unraveling as the night goes on. If you're still with me, thanks for listening. And if sleep has already taken you, may your dreams be peaceful and your mind at ease. I'll be here next time by the fire with another story waiting to be told. Good night, and don't forget to lock your doors.